All right, my friends, let's see how much we can get done in this beautiful mimer, this beautiful essay written by the first Lubavitch, who's Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Shneur Zalman. And we've already given 2 classes on this. So this is the third and final installment, but I don't know if we have enough time to actually finalize this, but let's go. So what's the point? What are we learning now? God created man and he put him in the world. And God's job is supposed to be to fix up the world. All right. And in order to fix up the world, so he has to have a real world. And therefore, God made woman. It says not, the sentence says it with that God made a statement in this statement. It's not good that man should be alone. So he made him a woman, a wife. She was an Ezer Kenegdo. Ezer means a helper, and Kenegdo means opposing him. So that seems to be two opposites. And the Rebbe said exactly right. It is an opposite to man's easy living. Man, the angels, for instance, they don't have wives, they don't have families, they have an easy life, which is not the case man. And that's the way God wanted it. And if remember, we said yesterday, it's sort of like the difference between a glass, transparent glass, and a mirror. A mirror reflects backwards to the point that the mirror can even show you things that are in back of you. In other words, a mirror can shoot light back, show you something that's even before the holder of the mirror. So we're saying that's the same thing, that by means of the woman, therefore the world starts to become a little bit complicated and opposing to an easy life. You have to deal with another personality, another, how do you say, obstacles to just doing what you want. So that's what it means. An Ezer Kenegdo, she's a help. Kenegdo, once again, this, my pointer over here is jumping around because I haven't got a good surface to put it. 1 second, let me get it on my pointer, there we go. Okay. So that's what it means. Ezer Kenegdo, Ezer Vesiwa, she will be a helper because of Kenegdo, because she is opposing him. Namely because of this contraction and hiding of God's life, which stops his spreading out of God's oneness. Because of this, because of this, there is made the opposition. I mean, everybody knows, let's say, for instance, you have, sports. Sports is a multi-trillion-dollar thing, and it catches the attention of billions of people. Sports. What's the whole thing of sports? Is competition, one person against the other. What if you just have one person? Right, one person, there's no competition whatsoever. But even those competitions where one person, they don't directly come in contact, like, throwing the javelin or, the high jumping, something with, but still you're going against somebody else's record, somebody else's achievements. So there's something that opposes you and pushes you, right? You could be the greatest, but all of a sudden somebody comes along that's greater. So what is better, to be successful but not to do your best, or to be successful and someone comes and does better than you? And so you're successful in doing your best. So you thought, but when you have competition, so it brings out even more. So that's the idea of the Ezer connected. So God made the world, and he made inside of it, not only the world, but he made also the woman. These and in the part of the world also is what's called the natural soul of man, that he's attached and attracted to things in the world, which in a way that's good. In order to use the world, you have to be attracted to the world. You have to realize the world is valuable. This will be the help. This is what helps a person. Because of this concealment, there's made what's called a returning light. That's what it means. We did this yesterday. That's what it means. It makes God happy, so to speak. And this happiness will be revealed in the future with the raising of the dead. There's nothing worse than death. If Adam would not have eaten from the tree, he would have lived forever. There wouldn't be any death. And if there was no wife, then he wouldn't have eaten from the tree. So how can it say that it's better, that it's not good that he be alone? It's better to have a wife. So the answer is because transforming death in a way is better. Defying death and transforming it according to the way the Torah says is better. At least that's what God said, better than not having any difficulties at all. Mishem Avaya. Like they say in America, there's a saying, if there was no such thing as a deadline, no one would ever get anything done. Everyone would just push things off to the same thing. But it would be better if there was, just had eternal amounts of time. But no, because there's limits and because there's opposition, so this improves. Okay, let's just jump a little bit. Hine, after the sin of man, it says that God made katnot or, he made garments of skin, and skin as an aleph. There's some places where it says katnot or with an aleph, which means garments of light. But it doesn't say that in the Torah. It says garments of skin with an ayin, the letter ayin. If it doesn't say aleph of the word. Before man made a sin, there was a covering in the world. There was a world, and man had a natural soul, and he had a wife. But this covering was very thin. Like it says, that God put him into Gan Eden, put man into what's called heaven on earth, that he was supposed to work on the world and raise it up even higher than it was. But after man made the sin, then it became even more what's called kenegdo, opposite him. Then it became what's called klipat noga. It became a shell that had a little bit of shining in it. And this is the katnut, or this is the garments of skin. What's the thing? Why skin? Why not metal? Why not? Because the main thing of the nurture of external forces is by means of skin, because skin has in it hairs. Like it says, like a sheep in front of the shearers, she's quiet. Okay, this is I really want to make progress, but I see it's sort of impossible to do it. Let's understand what's going on over here. The way the world was supposed to be was that man saw clearly what had to be done, and he was able to do it. God put him into Gan Eden. As soon as man sinned, so everything became all confused. Now he has two things to deal with. He's got the world to deal with, and he also has, like the same sakit betoch sakit. He has the world, and now he's also got himself his improper connection to the world. So that makes two oppositions. And if he doesn't treat his connection to the world properly, he gives into it, then that makes even a bigger covering. So it says that's the whole thing of skin. It covers over. Now, there's a known fact over here that God enlivens everything, and he creates everything. So how does God create evil? Evil is the opposite of God. How can God create evil if it's the opposite of God? So the answer is that God gives evil just very thin amounts of life. And we overdo it. Right? We overdo it. I mean, I'll tell you a story, but it's not a nice story. If there's kids watching this, close their ears. I used to play music. I used to be a singer in all these bars. And once we played a bar, and it was after hours. The bar closed at 1, but it was after hours. There were these fellows that were all drunk, young guys, they're all drunk. And it seems that there were these ladies that were just waiting for these fellows. And they came out. Now, I wasn't drunk. I was playing, I was playing. We had a band, we were playing. All of a sudden, these ladies came out from the I don't know from where. They came from the back room or somewhere. And they were dressed hideously. They had these like shining sort of satin, whatever it is, garments on, weird, strange colors, all sorts of lipstick and mascara on their faces. I mean, they must have been, for sure in their 50s, 60s, whatever it was. But being in a bar room, living in a bar room life, when you're 30, you already look like you're 50, and when you're 40, you look like you're 80. Anyway, they came out, and these young men saw these ladies come out. If they would have been even a little bit less drunk, they would have run away from the place. But instead, the little bit of whatever it is they saw in them, they lit up like a candle, each one of them. To me, it was an astounding lesson how a person can totally fool himself. And that's what it is. God makes a little bit in the world. God gives a little bit of life to the bad, to negative things, and we exaggerate it. So that's the idea of the skin. After Adam ate from the tree, he became covered with skin. And through the skin are the holes, the pores from which hairs grow. And these hairs are like sources of life for evil. That's what it says, like, okay, the ikar tzmichas asaras, the main thing of growing of hairs is by means of the skin. And the skin has in it pores. And from these pores, the hairs grow. Like it says, gabi paraduma, like it says regarding the red cow, that if there are two hairs inside of one pore, that even though it's inside of two pores, it's not good. It has to be totally red. So the hairs grow from these pores. Well, but piraka or there's another in or rotiv. It says nekev she'en hadio over. And what is it? It's in Hulin, I think. It talks about writing on parchment. You have to write mezuzahs and things on the parchment. If there's a hole in the parchment, if it's small holes, then it's not so bad. But if it's a hole that's too big, it's no good. That's what one of the work has to be with Ovid Oros. It says that serving God is called avodah, and avodah is ibud. It's tanning hides, because the hides, that shows on the covering over of godliness, right? And in the world, of course, you make Torah parchments and mezuzahs and tefillin. You make it from these hides, but that's fixing up the bad. That's fixing it up. So it says, therefore, that's the whole idea of serving God. Avodah is from the language of ibud, like tanning, same language of hides. Therefore, it's called the Ovid Elokim, that he fixes up this name of the Elokim. He fixes up this name of God, which is like the hide that covers skin, leather, which covers over the revelation of God that comes from the name of Elokim. And that's the idea of Ovid Elokim, to work on it, to transform it. That was the job that Adam had to do after he sinned. Looking, therefore, it says, Vayasel Hashem Elokim la'adam v'ishto, and God made for the man and his wife these garments of skin. Two names, Hashem, Elokim. Hashem, that's the aspect which corresponds to man, the revelation, and Elokim, that's the aspect that corresponds to woman. That's the concealment. Both of them became concealed. These two names, the Adam and the Ishto, the man, he made, that's from the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. The woman is from the name of Elokim. It says that one of the Chanoch, he was an angel called Chanoch also, but also a person that he used to make shoes. Also, that's the thing of chalitza, taking off the shoe from man. That's explained in other places. Rotzei v'hachalitzenu, we say on Shabbat, that God removes the shoe. He removes the skin, the covering. Okay, let's go a little bit. Let's jump a little bit over here. Okay. Nevertheless, if man had not sinned, so there would be still a shell, like you said before, to make like a mirror that it would reflect back, but it would be fine. It would have been fine, thin. It wouldn't have been. It wouldn't be such a test, a challenge to overcome this thickness. So that's what God is saying. It's not good that he be alone. He has to have a challenge. Woman alone was a challenge. When she made him sin, that became even a bigger challenge. In some ways, I mean, don't try it at home. Don't say I'm going to sin and then it'll give me a bigger challenge. You have enough challenges as it is. But nevertheless, the whole idea is to elevate everything tachat parsa. Okay, if man had not sinned, then there still would have been this opposition. There still would have been a division, but it would have been something like in man, there's a division between the diaphragm, what's above that, which is his lungs and his heart and his brain, and the lower part, which is all the digestive system, that's the waste product comes from. That's okay, but still, that's all part of life. It's still alive. There's also there a parsa. There's also a division. In fact, there's this division exists in all of the worlds, right? The worlds are man is in the shape. How do you say the worlds are formed in the same form as man? There's upper worlds, lower worlds. Anyway, each world also has this separation, like we say, like the leather, but it would have been much, much finer if man had not sinned. All these separations and divisions. Okay. So similarly, we can understand above, there's also a division between the worlds in holiness itself, between the world of Atzilut and Bria. There's different aspects of God. Therefore, it could be that there has to be an elevation from one world to another. So in other words, if man had not sinned with the tree, there still would have been the division. God still would have been hidden, but it would have been hidden, like in a way we said, like a mirror. When we worked on it, it would reflect backwards. But after man sinned, so the Ezer Kenegdo was, now we have to work not just to elevate the world, we have to get rid of the bad also. We have to get rid of this, what's called Klippat Noga, the shell of nature. And that's the idea of what man was driven out of Gan Eden. But this, if man had not sinned, is like a tzipui dak. This is like a very thin covering that there could be or choser, like we talked about over here about the mirror. Because klippat noga, because this is what we call klippat noga, which is called the shell of nature without sinning. This already includes in it good and bad. This is enlivening everything in the world that's permissible. And it's called, what is in Hebrew, the word for permissible is mutar. Mutar means that it's not tied down. She'enu kashur b'yadei achitzonim. That's why certain foods, let's say, are mutar. What does it mean? They're permissible. They're not tied into be forbidden. If a person eats, let's say, a kosher chicken, so he can elevate it. If he eats a piece of shrimp, doesn't make any difference how many blessings he makes on it, or even what he thinks it is. Somebody told him that it's gefilte fish. He doesn't know. Nevertheless, it's cut. That's in the 8th chapter of the Tanya. These things are tied down, and you can't reveal godliness through them. But by means of this returning light, you can return back light, so to speak, to the Creator. We said that it becomes even higher than the Creator. It touches the source of creation. Okay, what have we explained up to now? We've explained why it is that if there are obstacles, if there are difficulties, that you should know that they come from God. And these difficulties are there in order that we should use them properly according to the Torah. And when we do that, then that makes a whole different type of order in the world, where the Creator is the boss. Right? Like we said before, like being able to use instruments in an orchestra properly, then we see that the music is ruling, not the instruments. You don't hear the instruments. You hear the music coming from the instruments. But if somebody plays off tune, then you say, hey, the bassoon is terrible. Right? The clarinet is doing something wrong. But if you don't, then you just hear the same thing is with the world. If you use the world for what God wants, then there's harmony, beauty. If you don't, then the world becomes an impediment to revealing the harmony which was intended when God created the world. Okay, because all of this is understood, what we say now, you have to notice that we're not talking about heaven at all. The purpose of man is definitely not to go to heaven. Heaven isn't, there is certainly a thing like that, going to heaven. There's no doubt about it. But that's just an interim thing. Here we're talking about using our free will in this world. When you go to heaven, you haven't got any free will. That's not the point of this. This point is what we said before, Ovid Avodah, to work on the world and to soften it up, tan it up. All of this, we can understand what we say in the blessing of the wedding blessings. Samach to Samach, it says, Mesamech Chatan Vikala. First, there's 7 blessings you say it under the wedding canopy to marry the bride and the groom. So the first blessing, it says, we bless the groom and the bride. The bride is second. And the last blessing, which is Asher Boro, we say we bless the groom with the bride. The bride is the first. The groom is like following after the bride. What does this mean? This bride, we said, that's Malchut. That's the world. That's the opposition. In the beginning, the world receives she receives her life from the Chatan. That's godliness from above to below. That's the Chatan Vikala. The groom and the bride comes after. But afterwards, it says, Mesamech, we rejoice, the Chassan, the groom, that's the source of the light, the creator, so to speak, he rejoices with the Kala, by means of this, using this physical world properly. That's the Kala, that's the bride, that's the wife of Adam, like we said before. By using the world properly, this gives joy to the Chatan, to the groom, in this case is God. It makes him an Ezer Mamish that helps him and elevates this light. Because of the opposition. That's what it means, Nasa Atera Labala, that this world becomes a crown to God. The oppositions, they become a crown and a new revelation of blessing and holiness to this world. And that's exactly what Mashiach is going to do, to educate the whole world. That the whole world, all mankind, and especially the Jews, will look at the world in a different way. Instead of looking at the world as an obstacle to holiness, they'll look at it as a challenge and the only means by which to really bring holiness, and even more as a goal. It's like a doctor, a sick person comes into the doctor's office. The doctor says, I don't believe it. Can't you people just be healthy? Why do you keep bothering me with all this disease? Exactly the opposite. The doctor looks at a sick person and says, don't worry, my friend. I'm going to make you healthy. You're going to be better than before. But he sees it in it a challenge. So also God put man in the world to make the world a healthy place. And that's why we are here now, to make this world a healthy place. And that's what Mashiach is going to teach us how to do. That's why we're desperately need Mashiach now. Have a good Shabbat with Moshiach Now.